We have liftoff. Welcome, friends, to the best Monday Kings of Anglia podcast of the season so far, following the best result of the season so far for Ipswich Town. And we're better to break all that down than one of the best EFL podcasts. We've not won the title yet. Not our words, it's fact. I'm your host, Mark Heath, and with me, three giants of the podcast and Ipswich Town coverage game. Andy Warren, Stuart Watson, and Ross Halls. And I'm going to start first of all with Stewie because we missed you last Thursday, Stu. You were off being a doctor somewhere, working shifts in a local hospital. Hope that went well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Can I just say, gents, that the Ross joining you live for his results last weekend was a moment of podcast gold. I very much enjoyed that.
Were you on tenterhooks?
I was. Yeah, I really thought it was going to be the day. I really did. I think we'd all convinced ourselves, but the saga continues. That's all anyone wanted to talk to us about at the game on Saturday.
Rossi, I've got to come to you now. We haven't spoken to you on this forum since last Thursday. We cut live to you in one of the most dramatic moments in podcast history. Unfortunately, we didn't get the result that we wanted. How are you? How have you recovered? Have you bounced back? You ready to go again?
Yeah, as I said on the outro of my little brief cameo, I said I went to Greg's and I got myself a cheeky bacon and cheese slice, which was nice. But yeah, I've recovered. And yeah, that was the only thing anyone wanted to talk about on Saturday. Even the club secretary, Stuart Hayton, even said, "Sorry about your about what happened, but back's better next time."
Have we got the next fixture? Have we got another game to build towards?
Not yet, because every time I look, there's just no slots available for like a couple of weeks. But sometimes you can sneakily, out of nowhere, they come available like this week. So I'm going to look out for the next few days and hopefully out of nowhere, boom. So
Boom.
bring it on.
Quite a few people have contacted me personally actually to say, is Ross aware you can get an app on your phone where you can take tests?
Yes.
Have you got the app?
I do. Even good old Mick, who's also he came up to me after the game. He's actually a driving instructor. He came up to me and showed like, this is the app I use, for my students and stuff. But I have got an app, and I am revising, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just terrible at tests, and I'm just not very good, am I? So
no,
yeah.
Stop that negative talk. I want positive, a PMA, positive mental attitude.
Yeah.
The way you talk about yourself is how you think about
Yeah.
yourself. So let's have some positivity, Ross. You're going to smash the next test.
Come on,
because you are a driving machine. That's the way to approach it, please. Right then, the final wheel on the bus this week or today is the man. We've got a doctor operating on patients. Hopefully, no one will find out. Stewie, Rossi, who's responsible for one of the greatest moments in KOA podcast history, and now the Hutch man, Hutch Hogan, responsible for only launching a new European competition on the pod last week. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm snowed under with admin. Turns out running a European football competition brings with it some certain amount of admin. Having some issues with some of these teams, if I'm honest, about when the ties are going to be played. Can they switch to a bigger venue? No, is the answer. Play at your home ground.
Is that sponsorship tied down? Is it definitely Milker Cup? Because I'd imagine
the Milker Boys, yeah. The Milker Boys have come in and secured that for 2 years, so that's good.
Excellent. Well, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to last Thursday's pod because it was eventful in many ways. Something else was eventful in many ways as well, as we were expecting and hoping, boys, and we got the result we wanted as well. On Saturday, Ipswich Town scored the biggest win of their season so far, beating promotion rivals, previously unbeaten Portsmouth, at Portman Road in front of a bumper crowd. What a result. Let's talk in depth about it now in excited tones. Hutch, I'm going to come to you first. Your thoughts to begin with. What was it like as a dad? Obviously, a lot of people who listen to this pod will have been there. A lot of people from around the world weren't there. They would have seen the highlights and maybe followed it through various channels. What was it like to actually be there as an occasion? What was it like?
Just a big game of football. Felt meaningful. I wrote something in the build-up about a growing rivalry between the two that probably lacked the on-pitch narrative, and we've got it now. A really big win, and just a really good performance in various ways in front of a big crowd. It was it was really good. Kind of a bit of a throwback to kind of what Town have been used to being involved in previous years, and what they aspire to be involved in every single week, home and away, going forward. And some really good signs coming out of it as well. Really good.
How big was this win, Stewie, for Ipswich Town? Ipswich Town in recent times have got a history of choking, crumbling under pressure. They lose big games or they draw them. That's what they do. They don't win big games. They've just won a big game. How big is it? And can you think of the last time Town won a game of this magnitude?
Probably the biggest win since McKenna's first match, the Wickham game. Don't think there's been anything bigger since then. And then you're going back to, I really don't know. It's felt like the biggest win in a long time for a whole manner of reasons, really. Mainly the prime one being that I think this helps slay a few mental demons, as much for the fan base as it does for the current squad. I think it's kind of unfortunate for McKenna and the current crop that all this talk about, don't win in front of big crowds and haven't beat the better teams in League One. So much of that narrative predates them, but it's there for the fans. And as we've kept saying in this podcast, it's up to this current crop to kind of get rid of that feeling. And that's why this game was so important, because when it went to 2-2, that was such a deflating moment. And you were just thinking, here we go again. Leeds dropped for the third successive game. Another big, the whole tone of this podcast and the mood around the football club would have been completely different had they not gone straight up the other end and scored within 60 seconds. We're very early in this season, but I just think that this could be a real defining moment that we look back on. Hopefully, if they can continue on from here.
Let's talk more about in depth about the game in a minute. Rossi, you were pitch side, a very privileged position. What was it like from your angle?
It was fantastic. What a game of football! Great atmosphere. When Town fans get told fill the ground, they do that, don't they? That's what Mark Ashton wanted to see. That's what Kieran McKenna was saying as well. Be the 12th man, and it was just great to see. People of all ages, just everyone. Community of Ipswich Town, which is just fantastic. And the two teams put a show on as well, and it was a really good game of football. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of fans who will maybe go into the first game for a very long time will want to come back because they were entertained.
Yeah, we're seeing good games now as well, aren't we? Which is great. Hutchie, kick us off then. Let's start a bit of a round table discussion amongst yourselves about the game. Where do you want to start? What's the first talking point?
I think you have to start with the kind of the resilience of just battling back from setbacks. Again, a narrative predating Kieran McKenna and this group of players, as Stu has already said, but it wasn't just losing big games or not beating the big rivals. It was every on-pitch setback seemed to send the team back to square one, didn't it? Even within individual games, they weren't battling back from setbacks in games, and they did that. They did that 3 times. But in this one, they took 3 leads. I think you have to acknowledge that they also kept Portsmouth at arm's length for almost all of this game, aside from 2 penalties. So it was a topsy-turvy game. It was an up and down one. But aside from 2 kind of rash-ish moments, they were in control of it all. I thought they did. I thought they played it perfectly.
What was the stat I saw? Was it 3 shots on target Pompey had, and 2 of those with the penalties? So clearly, overall, having watched the highlights, I wasn't at the game. It seemed like Town was mostly in the ascendancy. Stewie, keep us going. What else do you want to highlight?
Yeah, it's 3-2. It was an entertaining game. The Plymouth game was a better game of football in terms of the quality of the game. There were times where the quality levels weren't as high in this, maybe because the stakes were so high. In the second half, at the start of the second half, I thought it was starting to get a bit bitty, a bit scrappy. Portsmouth was starting to slow things down, which was a great irony with given how the game finished. And And I was just starting to wonder with a bit of the nerves and frustration, and we were getting towards one of those games that we've seen so many times where it just gets a bit tense and frustrating, and everyone gets a bit edgy, which was why I think the Freddie Ladapo goal for me was, such a big moment in the game with the subs coming on and changing things. But Andy talked about resilience, just the fact that it could have been one of those days, and it's another reminder of how Ipswich are an improved team. And just a few months ago, this was another game. We keep saying this is a game Ipswich wouldn't have won last season, but now they can, and that's just, I think, where are we at in terms of points up on respective fixtures from last season? You've got to do a few tweaks for teams that have got sort of promoted and relegated, but for my looking at it, 20 points up, pound for pound already. I think there's only 2 games that they haven't improved upon from last season, which would have been obviously Plymouth away and maybe Barnsley at home if you swap them out for Sheffield Wednesday being the team that had finished bottom of the Championship. So that just shows you, we keep talking about sort of baby steps, not even baby steps, bigger than that, toddler steps in the right direction. That they're just it's just another sign of improving upon last season. Portsmouth was 0-0. This time they found a way to get it done.
And it's kind of a reversal of trend of recent games, isn't it, Stu? You mentioned that the subs changing the game, going back to what was the story earlier in the season. Hasn't been the case for the last couple of games. But Big Fred comes on the pitch, scores with his first touch. What a finish that was, by the way. And Carl Edwards as well. So nice to see a return to that story as well.
You're trying so hard not to give him a nickname, aren't you, Mark? I can tell. You're all in on Freddie Ladapo since you met him pre-season when you went in to do a bit of stuff around that third kit, aren't you? And I know you're biting your tongue.
Come on, what's it going to be?
I'm not giving him a nickname. No, I haven't.
Don't give it to him, but there's one in your brain, isn't there? Don't give it to him. Just put it on the table.
I'm not
remove the cloche.
No.
And then put it back on again. You're not having it.
No, there's been Freddie's had enough on his plate already without me cursing him with a nickname. But he's a lovely guy, and I like to see good guys do well, and especially a bit of an underdog, given the kind of debate around him and discussion around him. So it's nice to see him score 3 and 3, isn't it? Now he's on 4 for the season. He's only 2 off Chappers overall. And again, he's changed the game, hasn't he, boys, when he's come on? He scored with his first touch. We saw at Plymouth when he went off, the game changed a little bit. I like him. Is that wrong?
He's still their best number 9, isn't he?
Yeah.
Their best striker. I think we've been quite consistent about him on here for several weeks now, with some ups and some downs and some bumps to overcome along the way, but it's not been perfect from Freddie Ladapo. Let's not go overboard, but he's, for me, is still I'd be playing him every week personally from the start of games.
How did Big Cat, Andy Warren's nickname, Tyrese John Jules, how did he do in starting in that striker role?
Worked hard. You couldn't fault the work ethic, but there was something a little bit missing. I think I don't really know how to sort of sum up his performance. I've talked about the second half was starting to drift. The first half an hour, Ipswich flew out of the blocks. They played some brilliant football in that first half. My thought when I see those two teams come out, Portsmouth play 4-4-2, I was thinking Ipswich's best chance in this game was to overload the middle. I thought the game plan would have been for John Jules to play that false 9, to drop deep and add another body in midfield. I thought Harness would tuck inside from the left, as he often does, and Ipswich would look to kind of swamp Marlon Pack and Joe Morrell in midfield. And in the end, they actually targeted the flanks. And I think Wes Burns talked about this in his post-match, that they wanted to get at Portsmouth wide. And Wes Burns, I thought, came back from international duty with the bit between his teeth. We've talked about him not really being quite at his same levels from last season, but he's gone away with Wales, obviously not played for them. And he, in those first 20 minutes, they got him isolated a few times, and he looked up for it in this game, and the joy came down the flanks, didn't it?
Yeah, he looked It seems weird. Like he obviously didn't play for Wales, but he definitely looks like he's come back with some freshness, and that like a 10-day break from Ipswich, a different focus, take your mind off your club football for 10 days, train with Gareth Bale every day, get shouted at by Michael Sheen, or like he. This is going to sound really stupid, but like even his kit looked kind of brighter on him. Like he just honestly, I didn't say this out loud in the press box, Stu, because I thought you'd think I was being a bit simple, but he honestly looked like he was just had a bit more of a glow about him, just in the way he was playing and how he looked from on high. And I'm not going overboard. I don't think he was I still don't think he was at his absolute flying best in this game either. But he just looked that bit more fresh. That a break had done him a little bit of good. His hair was glowing that bit more. It was and I'm glad I didn't say it out loud at that point then, because you're laughing at me now.
You didn't want me to think you were simple, but you were happy to air your views here instead.
Look,
That'd be fine.
now he's scored. Now he's scored the winning goal. I'm happy to make these views public for the tens of people that listen to this on a.
He's had
weekly
a glow
basis.
up. Was Wes Burns then? Was he in the room when Sheen gave that speech, which has been seen across the world? Because I've got to be honest, I was really underwhelmed with the reaction to that. Sheen's given it his best kind of Oscar-winning, in character, blood and thunder, chest thumping cry for Wales to slay everyone before them, and the reaction is.
But he's done it on TV already, hasn't he? Like that. That's what this, because it was in some corporate hotel somewhere. Just that needs to be more organic than that. I think. Like, right, Michael's coming in to give you a rousing speech.
Yeah,
I'd struggle. I'll be honest.
Well, you'd struggle anyway, Hutchie.
No,
you're not a man for blood and thunder speeches. I can't imagine you'd get up. But I want people up, chest bumping, head butting walls, that kind of thing. That would be my reaction to seeing Sheen in the flesh.
They should take him to Qatar. Get him on. Take him to the World Cup with them and do it there. That he might get the reaction that he wants.
I'm not sure. Sheen's a man with principles and morals. I'm not sure I can see him going to Qatar and getting involved in that's happening out there.
Not
being
even
there.
Name the World Cup.
No, well, yeah. Anyway,
it's all about the Milker Cup, mate. Anyway,
I can't see that tournament and where it's happening aligning with Sheen's kind of much reported and well known stance on various things. Rossi, another man with lots of morals and principles. Let's talk about Marcus Harness, because I'm interested in Marcus Harness. He scored 6 goals this season. I should have said earlier, of course, he's tied with Chaplin now. Should be on 7, in fact. But quite often when we talk about him on the pod, there's a chat around kind of risk versus reward. The reward is he's got a really nice goal scoring record. The risk is that he gives the ball away a lot. And I know in your Stu Says bit from Saturday, Stu, you said again he was kind of hit and miss. I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on Harness as a player so far, because on paper he scored 6 goals, should be 7. But then when we chat about him often, we never really talk about him as being a standout player.
I do like Harness. I think he is clinical when he does get, in good, positions. He's very different to Connor Chaplin, because Connor Chaplin is a whipper. He's just here, there and everywhere. And see, Marcus Harness a bit different. And I'm sure I loved the chant, which was from town fans. I won't say it all, but he left you because you're, or I think that's how it went to the Pompey fans. But now I'm sure he was happy. Good goal from Marcus Harness as well. But yeah, I think when I spoke to the Pompey guy when he first signed, he's a good player for this level, but he can be a bit inconsistent, and he has shown that at sometimes. I'm thinking what game it was. It was last week, weren't it? You didn't have a great game, did he, Marcus Harness? But overall, I think he's fitting really well. Scoring the goals. I don't think we're going to get a consistent 90 minutes from him all the time, but I think. He's getting involved, scoring the goals. I like him. I like his hair. I like his eyes. We like him.
Hutchie, you're a noted fan of Harness's eyes. What do you make of him as a player?
Everything we've been saying about him. You talk about risk versus reward. They got the reward this week. They didn't last week, and that's that sums him up, I think. Missed in a big moment on an off day for him at Plymouth, scored in a big game 6 days later. So that's Marcus Harness, I think, and that's fine. I think I'm okay with that.
What was the chant then? He left you because you're really rather underwhelming. Was that essentially the kind of civilized version of it? Can we have more civilized football chants going forward?
No,
Can we clean them up a bit?
It's not going to happen, is it? It's not going to happen.
I
Nah.
say, chaps, your footer is really rather average. Hutchie, you were talking before the game about Edmondson maybe being a bit average of recent times, and suggesting maybe this was a game that KO might come in for. He didn't. As it turned out, Edmondson was bloody good, wasn't he?
Yeah, he played really well. Headed everything, both boxes. Played well on the floor as well. Obviously got forward to help create one of the goals. And I think both him and Luke Wolfenden had really good games. Obviously, they were both involved in the first penalty incident. Edmondson not dealing with a long ball, and then Wolfenden misjudging quite badly the second ball from that. But I think both of them played really well. Wolfenden recovered from that really nicely. I thought I had a really solid game, and Edmondson, his best game for Ipswich, probably under Kieran McKenna, at just the right time. So just an all round. Everybody contributed to this game, all of them. There's all in their own ways. Some of them slightly more headliney than others. But Edmondson and Wolfenden, I thought played really well and looked after a strike force that brought a little bit of everything in theory, in Scarlett's movement and pace, Bishop's power and movement as well for Bishop. And they, aside from Bishop scoring 2 penalties, they looked after both of those really, really well. And that was a key element of the win.
And Kyle Edwards, Stewie, made a difference when he came on. Where do you see him fitting in this side? Is he just going to be an impact sub, do you think?
Not necessarily. We talked about harness and consistency there. I think this is, as we've talked a lot about, this is now looking to me very much like a 4-2-3-1. It's kind of slowly morphed from the 3 at the back to more of the 4 since Leif Davis has arrived. And so his most natural slot is where he ended up. We came on for harness, 20 minutes to go. Harness plays sort of very much tucked in on the left side. Kyle went a bit wider and was able to have that sort of 1v1 proper winger role against Connor Ogilvie, who was a sort of a left footer playing out of position at right back for Portsmouth, and was able to utilise that with his run for the winner. So Kieran McKenna afterwards sort of said he's had his most consistent 2-week training block that he's had under me. He's one player that we've not seen a lot of since McKenna's arrived because he had that thigh injury towards the back end last season. The formation didn't really suit him in the early days, but I think now with a few players injured, Greg Lee out, Sonny Aluko out, the door is ajar for him there, and I think the system suits him a little bit more. So if they want to go sort of a bit wider in certain games, that left-sided role in a 4-2-3-1 might just be available for him. And you could feel the sense of goodwill for him, couldn't you, from the fans during and after the game. He's such a likable lad. He just seems to be smiling all the time in any video and pictures that you see of him. He's such an exciting player to watch. He's the sort of player that you pay your money for to go and watch, isn't he? So I think everyone's really rooting for him, that this might be Kyle Edwards' time to shine, hopefully.
Well then, friends, the 2 things I definitely want to talk about match related. But before we go to them, is there anything else other match related you want to talk about? The 2 things I want to talk about, clearly the theft, the confiscation of the ball by Ipswich Town fans and the time wasting, and then obviously the post-match stuff with McKenna. Fairly extraordinary comments from McKenna post-match for a man who's quite low-key. Anything else before we get to those points that you want to bring up, boys?
I think Leif Davis needs a decent mention in here as well. We talked about him just getting better and better by the game. Took quite a hefty knock in the second half and dusted himself down and obviously set up Freddie Ladapo for the second goal. If you watch him for the winner, he's trying to bomb. He's almost keeping pace with Carl like trying to get around the outside of Carl Edwards when he crosses as well. Going forwards, he looks really good from left back. I know people are talking about already making comparisons to Aaron Cresswell, and he just looks like he's got such good physical qualities. Just ultra fit, strong, powerful. Defensively, there's still a couple of little question marks for me. He's just still learning when to. He gets a bit over eager, overzealous to win the ball. Can be guilty of giving away a soft free kick, an unnecessary free kick from time to time. But he looks like a player with a really high ceiling to him, and you can see why Ipswich have paid the money they have for him.
He was one of him and Owen Dale battling away was fascinating throughout all of that game, and I really enjoyed watching Janoy Donasian keep Josh Karoma, a championship standard footballer, almost silent throughout much of that game as well. The Ipswich, Stu said earlier, Wes Burns was talking about Ipswich wanting to threaten Portsmouth down the flanks. They did a good job of stopping the Portsmouth threat from the flanks as well, all in all. So just well handled all round, and a really good win.
Okay, I'm going to come to you then, Rossi, because you were the man closest to the fans. What did you make of the little theft of the ball, the kind of fun and games with it, to waste time towards the end of the game by Town fans?
Let's shit house them, innit? Let's shit house. That's what it's all about. Sorry to swear. That's what the chant was about the Marcus Harness thing. So you left you because you're shit and all that.
Good. That's that one cleaned up.
Yep. One
Thanks,
for the
Ross,
swear
yeah.
jar. One for the swear jar. It's fine. I liked it originally, the first time it happened, because you know, way. But when it happened again and again, it's sort of like, we've had this already, lads, you know. And I think I even saw Janoy. Janoy was actually getting frustrated because I think, you do it once, a bit of fun, but when you see your own players not actually getting a bit frustrated because they want to continue to play because it's stopping the flow of the game a little bit.
And the time's getting added on, isn't it? It's not like
because it's just the thing. It's like it's even like substitutions. You know, when players walk slowly, like the referee will just keep adding time on, so it's pointless. And you know, I know there's one Pompey player, you know, had a little bit of a little tussle with a fan, didn't they? You saw. But yes, it's fun once, but if you do it over and over again, it does get a bit really, guys. But you know, it's just part and parcel of football, isn't it? You know,
I think it added to the occasion, the big game feel. You know, the kind of the maybe the needle between the sides, etc. I mean, if I was a Pompey player, I'd be fuming. That would really wind me up.
So I want to say one more thing as well. I was also seeing Danny Cowley looking up to Mark Ashton and like talking about that, and Mark Ashton said like, what can I do about it? You know, he can't do anything, can he? Because he's up in the director's box. So there was one moment I was looking up and Cowley was like talking directly to Mark Ashton. He was like,
really?
Yeah. So,
wow. What did you make of it, boys? I mean, Cowley, to be fair, after the game kind of said, I'd rather that be happening at a game where there's 30,000 people than playing in a game where there's only 300 people there and we don't see that sort of thing. Did you have any kind of particular feelings either way on it?
I don't have hugely strong feelings either way on it, if I'm honest. I think it did maybe go on a little bit too long. And I think I'm glad that Portsmouth didn't find an equaliser in the 7th minute of stoppage time. But as things have shaken out, it's going to be something that this game's probably remembered for. Just one of those little markers of something that'll be add that to the growing rivalry list. But it's kind of football, isn't it? It's what happens at football matches sometimes.
Yeah,
I liked it. I thought about it quite a lot, and my gut instinct is, that's not very Ipswich. It's not very family club. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, do you know what? That was a club coming together. We talk about this being a moment in time. That was, I think, everyone realizing that this was a moment in time, and that it was just, chief exec, manager, players, fans, knowing that they're on the cusp of something special this season, and going, do you know what? We're in this together. We're fighting together, and we're going to come on to McKenna's quotes in a minute, which was again just someone staunchly defending his football club. And I just thought, We talked before about the sleepy Suffolk mentality, and we go to Hillsborough a few weeks ago and they're chucking things on the pitch, and we don't condone that at all, but that played its part in creating a hostile atmosphere that maybe just fine margins means that the linesman doesn't flag for offside at the end. And I know the time got added on. I know it could have come back to bite them on the backside, but I'll tell you what, it rattled those Portsmouth players. And Cowley talked afterwards about we got swept up in the emotion of that. And did that stop them cool heads really pushing for an equaliser at the end? Did their sort of, I think it probably did derail their chances of trying to go and get a late equaliser. Do I want to see this become something that happens at Portman Road week in, week out? No, because I don't think it would reflect too well on the football club. But you've got to remember this is a fan base that has seen teams come to Portman Road and time waste. Time and time again. We had it with Cheltenham last season. Portsmouth had done it. If you remember Danny Cowley not giving the ball back on the touchline and stuff like that. So, do you know what? Good on them. And I think people were just getting a bit giddy. That it'd been such an emotional roller coaster of the game. And then, to have got the 3-2, I just think everyone had got swept up in it a little bit. And you see one person do it and then everyone else joins in. It just happened organically. And on reflection, I'm all for it. I quite enjoyed it, I think.
To touch the ball in the stands at a football match is a very rare and special treat. Do something with it. Use it.
Pop it.
Either don't pop it. That was McKenna was speaking afterwards about like multi-ball and stuff, wasn't he? About it does seem a bit bizarre that in that scenario the whole game is stopped looking up into the stands to see some bloke going way, and that is stopping the game. That is able to stop a game of football in 2022. But there you are.
Okay, right then. That brings us on, I guess, to the real talking point post-match, or indeed from the game as a whole, other than Town finally getting this big win, was the mild-mannered, very calm, very laid-back, very considered, analytical Kieran McKenna. His post-match comments, boys. We're going to play them in full in a second. This is basically in response to Cowley pre-game saying everyone thinks that Town are going to go up, and essentially saying they're buying the league, pretty much. I think we've got them all lined up, ready to go, have we, Hutchie?
Yep, let's press play.
So proud of the 3 points. Again, we know there's another big one coming Tuesday, but again, proud is my overriding feeling for the players. I think the longer that you're here, you get a really good feel for the culture of the club and the challenge of being at this club. And part of that challenge in this league is that you will have other managers and other teams who want to talk about Ipswich. People will want to talk about Ipswich. People will want to, big up our football club and downgrade their own players and their own football club for different reasons. And some of them reasons is to create the false entitlement that we should be winning games and we should be dominating teams like Portsmouth and we should be winning this league. And I think everyone within the club now needs to be clever enough, having seen that probably for the last few years, to know that is it's a false kindness, and it's a kindness to trick and to trap the football club into feeling that anything other than hard work is going to win us football matches and progress us as a club. I think we have no right to dominate the first half as much as we did today. I think Portsmouth have an outstanding team, full of championship players. If you want to count the championship appearances and the international caps between the two teams, then you would find an interesting matchup. One of the only players they don't have who's a championship experienced player is one of the best young strikers in world football, in my opinion, in Dean Scarlett. I think Danny's done a fantastic job recruiting an excellent team and a very deep and quality squad. And we've got no right to dominate that first half as much as we did. We dominated because of how the players work every day and how they apply themselves and how hungry and humble they've been in their day-to-day work. And that is the only thing that is going to make us successful as a football club, and it's where we need to remain focused. And as a club, players, staff, supporters, everybody, we need to understand that, people will want us to think differently. People will want to, again, downplay their own club to justify certain things, to justify styles of play, to justify approaches to games, to try and putting themselves in position to get points from us. And we need to be above that. We need to be very, very clever, very, very hungry and humble as a football club to do as we did today, to stick together, perform, work very, very hard. And that gives us a chance to put on a performance that we did in the first half and gives us a chance to go and win games.
Stu, you're the man speaking to Kieran post-match, so it's right that I come to you. What was your take on that? Because some of the words you used, false kindness, trick and trap, they're fairly emotional, emotive words. What was your take on it all?
Yeah, emotional, emotive words, but ones that have clearly very carefully been thought about to paint a picture of how that press conference started. Kieran McKenna came in, and as he was taking his seat, the club press officer was showing him something on his phone, to which obviously a group of journalists say, what are you looking at there, Kieran? Are you looking back at one of the goals? I assumed he might have been looking at some of the penalty incidents, perhaps how the third goal went in. I don't know. And he just said, no, just looking at some quotes with a bit of a wry smile. And we sort of went, oh, right. Who's that then? He said, oh, just something inspirational. Gandhi, I think, with a bit of a glint in his eye. And very clearly it became apparent as that clip shows that, notice how he never mentions Danny Cowley by name in there. But he enjoyed that win. You could see those pictures that we just flashed up while he was talking. That was a more animated Kieran McKenna at full time. And I think that off-field rivalry of Portsmouth, I think, has needled a few. I think that fist pump and McKenna looking up is probably towards the direction of Mark Ashton in the press box. I'm sure. I think we go back to that first ever fans forum that Ipswich did, and that was all centred around the Checkbook FC comments of Portsmouth. We've had Michael Jacobs' saga. We've had so many things go on with Ipswich and Portsmouth off the pitch. We've now had some on-the-field rivalry sort of injected into it. I just think it's great from Kieran McKenna. He did it so intelligently and so articulately, and he's someone that's clearly thought those through, creating a bit of a siege. If you can create a siege mentality around a successful team, that's really impressive. And I don't think there's any coincidence that he has watched Ferguson throughout the years at Manchester United. How Ferguson managed to make Fergie time and that siege mentality around a Manchester United team that was successful year after year. And he's learned directly from one of the best in Jose Mourinho as well in terms of mind games. For a young manager in his first ever senior job to be sort of hitting that level of mind games, I think is really, really impressive. And to me, that just put the icing on the cake of a really, really satisfying day for Ipswich.
Do you know what I loved about it as well? Aside from, the way he articulated it, was that when he dropped in there, didn't he? If you look at the championship appearances between the two sides, without saying fact, this is what is, the way it shakes down. He knew how it shook down. So someone somewhere has actually done that, and he's seen it, and he knows that there is Pompey have an advantage in that department. Actually, aside from the kind of emotion of it, is he right? Do you agree with what he said?
Yeah, completely. I completely agree with what he said. It's all pointed at Danny Cowley, but he's not the only one that would reference Ipswich's budget. They've got we don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly where Ipswich's budget is within this league or how much it is. I'm not going to pretend to know those figures, but I feel sure it's a very good budget for the league. But even if it is a very good budget for the league, that doesn't buy you anything. And if people fall into the trap of thinking that it should be a walk for this Ipswich team, that it's really dangerous. We've seen it. We don't need to be told that. We've seen that in the last 3 years, how dangerous that can be. It's got to be focused. It's got to be driven and internal as well, not allowing outside factors to get in and influence things. And I think they're good at it. I think they're good at doing that. But this game maybe took that a little bit further, and it needed to be not just for Kieran, not just for the group of players, and not just for the fans, everybody at the club, inside and out of it, just a reminder of how tough this is going to be from this point onwards, and that how much they need to focus on what they're doing themselves. the thing I like about it most is just how all in I think Kieran McKenna is on getting Ipswich Town up to the Championship and then even further. We've obviously had some conversations on here very briefly, really, in passing about Brighton and would that appeal? Would the Championship appeal for him right now? I don't think it would, within reason. I think he's come to a club where he's found a really good environment for a first job in management, a really good fit. Yes, it's a club with means as well. It's well financed, but it's a club that's a really good fit for him, and it's going to give him a really good chance of moving his career forward, and hopefully him and Ipswich go forward together. But I think that was just a reinforcement of him being all in on this club, and that's exactly what you want from your manager.
Hot take: Kieran McKenna will be linked with a Watford job before the end of the season.
He was the last time it was free about 10 days ago, wasn't he? So
Bilic will be out before Christmas. Then McKenna will be
Brighton gave me a little wobble when Brighton became available, but Watford, no chance. When Kieran McKenna talks about very, very carefully picking his first job and a project and everything, Watford couldn't be further from that. That's
who on earth takes those jobs? Who you have to be like Bilic is, mate. You have to be like really bullish about what you can do or desperate to take a job there, don't you?
Well, I mean, Bilic seems to be the sort of character that would appeal to, because he would back himself, and he's a bit of a maverick himself, isn't it? But I mean, wow. Anyway, Roscoe, as by way of drawing a line under this game, you spoke to the fans afterwards. Obviously, go back and watch it if you've not game day. What was the mood like? I'd imagine fairly jubilant.
Yeah, many fist pumps, many hugs, kisses. No, not that far. We're not that close, but no, lots of happy faces. I'm sure a lot of very happy pubs in the town centre as well. I'm sure a lot of town fans continue their night enjoying. But yeah, just a lot of happy faces because we finally won a big game, a statement win. Because we were thinking, is this ever going to happen? No, Kieran McKenna and co delivered a very entertaining game of football. And hopefully they can continue this momentum going into some winnable games, this month. So yeah, a lot of happy faces and a lot of good chat.
I think football's a lot about belief and having reference points, isn't it? Both for the crowd and the players. And so next time a scenario like this unfolds, I think now that you can then go back to that reference point and go, okay, we've been here before and we came through it. So I think, if that happens again in a game, I just think it's really important to have those kind of fairly modern reference points, both for players and the crowd to be able to call upon. And that's why Saturday was huge.
I think Hutchie made it. Sorry.
So just to start, this team writing you can tell me about the good point that I made in a minute if you want. Don't forget that.
No, I won't now.
This is about this team, going back to what we talked about earlier, this team writing their own narrative now and starting to leave all that baggage behind. Because it is in the past. We all feel differently about this team than we do to Paul Lambert's teams and the start of Paul Cook's teams. We all do. So maybe we can start to leave a lot of that stuff in the past and just go off what we're seeing from this team and the positive things that this team are starting to show us they can do.
As I was saying, Hutch, I think you made a fairly average point on the last show when you said about belief and how you feel going into games and how that feels different. Going into games like this now, you feel like they can win them, which was not the case before. And now they've actually won one of them. That perpetuates that feeling, doesn't it, going forward? So more of that, please. Right then, let's draw a line under that game. Unless there's anything else to mention, boys. Any other business on town slaying Pompey? Excellent.
Whenever you say anything else to mention, I always want to go just money's too tight to mention, and I always want to say it, and that's the first time that I have, and probably the last.
Then we can have a little sing song. A couple of things we should mention before we get on to what's coming next. Obviously, Cambridge tomorrow night. Things that have happened since we last spoke. I guess in terms of news, injury news again, the injury bug biting. Gassana had me now, the latest to suffer a fracture to a bone. Roscoe, you saw him hobbling around the the Playford Road pitch, didn't you, last Friday at the under-21s in a cast or in one of those kind of air boot things. He's going to be out for a little while now. So now we've got Hadme, Aluko, Lee, Kamara, all out. Burgess out for fairly lengthy periods of time. How do you feel about that, boys? Hadme as an injury, Stewie, how much of a blow is that? I know we've barely seen him, but clearly
you can't put it on the same level as Aluko and Burgess and people that were contributing to the team and Lee because he's just come here and we haven't really seen him thus far. But I suppose it narrows your forward options down that little bit. The fact that John Jules has started to play there a little bit more means, I think before we were talking about it being just Jackson and Ladapo, but John Jules now is firmly kind of part of that number 9 rotation. It's disappointing, but I don't think we can put it in the same sort of significant blow category as some of the others.
Bigger blow to him than it is to the team, I would say. Real shame for him because he came in such good form, didn't he? And then that's going to be a distant memory by the time we see him again.
Just while you mentioned that, seeing him at the under-21s, Rossi, you saw a fairly remarkable under-21s game. It was 1-0, but Town missed 2 penalties before scoring the winner again from the penalty spot in the 90th minute or whatever it was. What was that like? Who stood out as well?
Tawanda Chwaiwa missed 2 penalties, pretty much the same penalty. He tried to do Bianca, the first one, but it's just like, no, just give it to someone else. And thankfully, Edwin Abaje, I hope I said that right, he, of course, stepped up for the third one and scored. But I have a feeling Tawanda may not be on penalty duty going forward for a while because, to miss 2 in the same game is not good going. But he stood out, to be fair, though, Tawanda. He's a good player. I know you boys, you've seen him in action a few times as well. But yeah, he's another player who just loves the ball, and he's just a step above playing that football. And maybe a loan spell is what he needs in the long term. And Edwin Abaje, of course, scoring that penalty. He's another person who really stands out every time I watch him play. He's a flying fullback and wing back in this day and age. But he's got all the attributes. He's a big boy. And I just want to give a shout out to Alfie Cockbush. He only played 45 minutes, but he's been out injured for 14 months. So it's good to see a young lad. It's a long time to be out. So, good to see you back in action.
Superb. Right then, boys. Cambridge. Ipswich Town have just won a big game. Now they've got to back it up by winning a game they should win, that should be expected to win at home tomorrow night. Back-to-back home games again. Cambridge United 10th in the league. But generally speaking, although they've been pretty impressive so far, whenever they've played a top side, as they did at the weekend, they lose. They lost 2-0 at home to Derby in Paul Warren's first game on Saturday. They've been hoshed by Pompey 4-1. I think they lost to Pompey. They've lost 3-0 at home to Barnsley. So when they come up against the cream of the crop, it seems they do tend to come undone, at least so far. Stewie, Cambridge United, how are you feeling about this one?
Well, we talked about improvements on last season. Let me take you back to when Ipswich lost 1-0 at home to Cambridge, I think in April time. If you remember, that came off the back of a similarly giddy home win against Plymouth. When we were talking about big wins, it's probably remiss of us not to mention that one when Ipswich beat Plymouth 1-0. That was a really good day, Paul Mariner day, everything that went with it. And expectations were high going into the subsequent home game against Cambridge. And they fell flat in front of a big crowd, I think of about 26,000 that day. I remember speaking to Janoy Danassian before the game, and the quote was, someone's going to get a big beating off of us soon. We're going to do a 4 or 5-0 soon. And that was the mood going into that Cambridge game. We cracked a big game, and now, now here we go. And it fell horribly flat. Just a bit deep, a bit passive, very sloppy. Cambridge scored from a set piece, and then we saw the time wasting narrative that we've discussed. So another opportunity to show that Ipswich can now back up good results in the same way that consistency was an issue last year. They were never quite able to string wins together last season. They've started doing that. It's another opportunity to do that again tomorrow night. And if the thing that gives me hope and confidence that will be the case is that in Kieran McKenna, they've got someone who certainly makes sure everyone's feet stay on the ground. Almost immediately he starts talking about the next game. after these wins. I remember going into that Cambridge game, he was the one that was saying, let's not underplay Cambridge here. They're going to be coming to Portman Road a motivated team. They're going to be a team that play with energy. They're aggressive. They get balls into the box. They get bodies around Ironside up front, who ultimately did cause Ipswich problems. Bless you. Bless you, Andy Warren. Just hit mute in time.
I tried to do that so quiet. You've outed my sneeze. That was a crazy sneeze as well. That would have been awful listening. Continue.
So yeah, it's for different reasons. This is a big game. Can they back up a big win and go again? I always love these sort of home double headers when they play Saturday, Tuesday. I wrote a piece that going into when this game was originally due to be played and before the Queen's death and the game was postponed, about the power of these home double headers. And I always think back to that playoff season under Mick McCarthy, and I think it happened 2 or 3 times quite early on in the season. I think Wolves and Watford, can't remember which way round that was, but they beat both of those. And those are moments, I think, if you can win in front of your own fans twice within the space of 4 days, momentum is very, very powerful in sport, and this is an opportunity to do that.
Before we get on to £1 million picks and stuff, I want to come to you, Rossi, because you had Cambridge as your dark horse this season. You sung the praises of Mark Bonner, who was involved in a little bit of going to Rotherham chat last week before he came out and said, "No, I'm staying here." He did actually speak to Rotherham, so that was definitely something that could have happened. It's not happening. He's staying at Cambridge. How are you feeling about this one?
I think it's going to be a professional performance. I think Town, I think they need to back up the win on Saturday, get back-to-back home wins. Cambridge, they're falling a bit now, though. They've had, the last 5 games, 3 defeats. They lost on the weekend against Derby, so they've had a bit of a shaky start, shaky recent form, not start, 'cause they had a good start to the season because they were in the top 6 for a period. But yeah, we just need to, that's another box we need to tick, beating a team that we didn't beat last year. We couldn't beat them, twice. So yeah, I like Cambridge as a team in terms of Mark Bonner and the project that he's built there. A lot of talking points going to this game. Jack Lancaster, of course, plays for them. Paul Digby, Diggers. But yeah, we just need to show how we've improved and beating a team like Cambridge that we didn't beat last year, and it will be another great night under lights, because I do love an under lights, don't you? You love an under lights at Portman Road.
Yeah, I'd imagine it'd be another big crowd tomorrow night. Great occasion, real chance to power pack 2 back-to-back games. Hutchie, before we get on to the game itself, we need to address £1 million picks, don't we, from the weekend? The big question, I guess, is are we counting the Pompey player confronting a fan? Is that a flashpoint?
It's up to you. You're the flash mob.
I haven't seen it, so I
would say no.
No,
it's not in the spirit of what I was trying to get at. I think a loss all round, 300 grand blown up the wall on Ross and his driving theory test. That was misguided cash. Won't be doing that again. And no touchline flashpoint, although there was more of a media room, press conference room flashpoint. And Morsey neither scored nor was booked. So shambles all round, really.
Can we just reflect on what a blinder Heath bookmakers played last week, tempting you with huge odds on Roscoe into a massive splurge, which then paid off grandly for me. And then you went to bits. Then you lost your head, and no one actually did lose their head on Saturday, which meant you lost more money. So
yeah,
what's the pot at the moment?
We're still at a very you've clawed some back there, but it's still at a very healthy 1.45 million, 2.45 million.
Wow,
sorry,
wow, okay,
yeah.
How?
So you're still struggling, mate.
I am.
Get those kids out of private school. You're struggling.
How are you feeling about this one then, Hutchie? In terms of the team, I guess we have to have a chat around the team. Is there anything you change going into this one? Is this now time we're going to see Richard Keogh, do you reckon, off the back of a Saturday game? Ladapo's got to start up top, surely.
Look, Kieran, I don't know if Kieran McKenna is a go again kind of guy. I feel sure there might be something, but I think I would probably go with what started the game on Saturday, but with Ladapo up front. That's what I'd be doing. There's obviously others you can think about. Edwards for Harness would be a thought, but actually I want my goal scorer on the pitch. So I would be keeping this simple, Ladapo for John Jules, and just back it up. I think the lads covered everything over this game.
Super. Right then, what do you reckon is going to happen?
Keeping it simple this time. Win to 0, clean sheet, victory. £250,000.
Win to 0, clean sheet victory. I'll give you 4-1 on that.
£100,000. I'll change my stake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's all I'm doing. Keeping it simple. Back it up. Let you what you really think do the talking. It's not the time for flourish.
Okay. So you think Town are going to win 2-0? What do you think the score's going to be?
2-0.
2-0. Stewie, your thoughts on anything around the team and then a prediction? You're on mute, mate.
You're on mute, mate. Get it off.
Sorry. I would echo Andy's thoughts on the team, and probably on the result as well, to be quite honest with you. I want to see that clean sheet. As much as fun as the sort of this trilogy against the teams has been, and there's been loads of goals going in at either end, I want to see Ipswich Town getting back to possession, control, win the game. I think might be 1-0 for a long time, and then maybe add a second late on, 2-0.
On that note, obviously we're used to Kieran McKenna Ipswich Town teams not conceding many goals, keeping clean sheets. They've now conceded 2, 1 and 2 in the last 3 games. Is that of any concern? I know they largely kept Portsmouth at bay at the weekend and both goals were penalties, but they are conceding goals.
Not hugely for me, if I'm honest. It's not a massive concern that those games were against the best teams in the league. They're not going to have these games all their own way. Remember, it was at Hillsborough, at Home Park, at Portman Road. They've limited a previously unbeaten team to very, very little. It's not a massive concern for me, no.
2 shots from outside the box at Plymouth, 2 penalties against Portsmouth, Sheffield Wednesday when they had nothing to lose and chucked the kitchen sink at them late on. I don't think it's something that we need to be ringing huge alarm bells about at the moment, but it would be nice to get back to a clean sheet tomorrow night.
2-0. Rossi, what are you saying?
I'm being boring as well. I've gone for 2-0. Sorry.
2-0. That's all right.
Yeah.
How do you see it shaking out? Who's going to score, Rossi?
Ladapo, Big Fred. He's going to score again, 3 and 3 the last 3 games for him. And I want to see a defender score. So,
Janoi.
Janoi. Although the bet is like, will Janoi score before me passing my theory test / drone test? So, but no, it'd be nice to see Janoi score. I think that will be one of the best moments of the season. See Janoi Donashian score. So
Edmondson got his head on quite a few corners, didn't he, at the weekend? I would say out of all the defenders, he'd be the one that I would say is most likely just going on Saturday's game.
Either him or Walton.
Yeah. Right then, friends. So we all think they're going to win. I think I said 3-1 in my predictions bit I did a while ago. Obviously, the game then got postponed. So we all think they're going to win. Hopefully, we're all correct. We usually are. Stewie, what did you make of your colleague Andy Warren's launch of the Milker Cup? You weren't around on Thursday, that eventful podcast. We launched a new European competition. There was music. I don't know how much you've listened to. They've already got a theme tune. The final venue is secure. The logo's in. We've got the teams. We've done the preliminary round draw. What did you make of it?
I'm all in. As soon as Andy texted me to say he'd gone deep on this, he'd gone too deep. I said you can never go too deep. Commit to it. Make it a labour of love. We now need to kind of see this through. It needs to be played out fictionally somehow. Can we get some representatives from journalists who cover these clubs? Can we get, given some of the smaller clubs, we can probably get their manager on the podcast and, I don't know, play some sort of quiz that determines who wins out of Ipswich and the opposition. Let's not just leave it where it is now. This is just the start.
Oh, it's happening. Hutchie's got a plan as to how it's going to play out. But a lot of people, Hutchie, I must say, absolutely loving it. And various questions about can we sim it on Football Manager, that kind of stuff. Is that possible? I mean, can you reveal anything in terms of how it's going to play out?
I've got a formula.
A formula?
And I'm going to write it on my window at some point. Just leave it with me. It's going to be played out. The inner workings you don't need to know about.
Okay.
Why are you writing it on your window out of interest?
It's what Mark Zuckerberg did when he launched Facebook.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I missed that reference.
Yeah, being a nerd, and I. But yeah, don't leave it with me. I'll let you know what's going on in the Milker. There's going to be a slight theme music change, by the way.
Copyright.
Turned out I bought a license. All it was, bought a license for the music off the lads. Fine for podcasting, not fine for YouTube. So I'll be honest, I'd forgotten that this goes on YouTube when I was detailing most of that. So I've sorted something else instead. Don't worry.
A surprising amount of people like to watch this as opposed to just listen to it. So there we go. So if you went back and listened to last Thursday's pod now, is that when you start playing the theme music without telling me, and I got quite excited, does that just now silence?
No.
It's still there.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. It's fine for it. And it would be fine to carry on just on the audio, but it costs a lot of money to use that on YouTube regularly. So
which we are going to be doing.
So I've sourced something more original.
Shady YouTube figures. I've been in touch.
Look at all this bureaucracy, Hutchie, and things you've got to do.
I mean, the guys behind that music they'll be kicking themselves when they realise that that their music could have, but
the new Champions League anthem could have been bigger than that, probably.
Could be. I've got something else that's got kind of shades of the Champions League tour, but with a bit more bass to it. That I'll play to you another time.
Are you going to provide some vocals to this, like the Champions League one, given your voice of a generation?
That's already recorded.
Mark's gone.
Should we just finish this without him?
Yeah. Ross, can you talk about Manscaped?
Yeah, 20% off, free delivery, all you need for your crown jewels and all that. Manscaped.com. Happy days.
Perfect.
Use the code KOA for 20% off and free delivery.
That's an important part.
Right. I don't know how we do this without Mark.
Completely rudderless now, aren't we?
Socials, Kings of Anglia, all that jazz.
Yeah.
Review, 5-star.
Yeah.
Shambolic. Vote for us in awards. They're important. I'll ask you both if there's any other business.
No other business.
Mark Heath has just texted the group chat now. Let's see what he says. Wi-Fi crashed. Can't get back in. See you next week.